Hi, everyone. I don't go anywhere without the gavel, so this is just an exciting thing. So I'm Christopher Taylor. I'm the mayor of Ann Arbor, and it's my tremendous pleasure to welcome you all to our election center, where we are having a Defending Democracy Town Hall. As folks know, I'm the mayor, and so I'm most familiar with local government, where we do all sorts of different things. We do police and fire and streets and sidewalks and clean water and sanitary water and stormwater and building inspection and everything. County adds human services. They add public health, community mental health, the sheriff, and so much more. And the state, don't even get to me what the state does. They do everything. It's a vast array of services and functions. And the bottom line is that we have representatives here from all levels of government tasked with providing basic services and improving quality of life for everyone in our community. And we do that as a government, as governments, through direct action, of course, and we do it through law and rule and regulation. And the exercise of these various powers, these various actions, they are justified by the consent of the governed. We obtain this consent, of course, through the franchise. Free and fair elections, our most important venture. Without free and fair elections, the legitimacy of government power and action, the legitimacy of civil society itself crumbles. That's why we, as a Michigan citizenry, went to the ballot in 2018 to expand the ease of voting and to void gerrymandering. That's why we, as a citizenry in Michigan, again returned to the ballot in 2022 to expand access further and ensure the ability of everyone to exercise their right to vote. We know that today civil society is under stress. To maintain it in its foundations, to ensure that our elections are beyond reproach, it's a full-time, all-hands-on-deck job. Fortunately, we have folks in Lansing and here locally, all government servants who are expert and diligent and righteous. And today you'll hear from some of them about the importance of voting, the protections we have to ensure quality, and the amazing infrastructure of staff and temporary workers who make it all happen. First, we'll have Clerk Boudry from Ann Arbor. Next speaking will be Clerk Kestenbaum, then Attorney General Nessel, and finally, Deputy Secretary of State Davier. These will be followed by these statements will be followed by a questions and answers. They will be written on these cards, and you should have all received them on the way in. If you have questions that you've written out related, of course, to voting and our voting structures, please find a city staff member, many of them wearing fabulous green t-shirts, and then they'll make their way over here. And we'll get through as many of them as we can. And so I'd like to thank all of our distinguished guests to the City of Ann Arbor and to Washtenaw County and get things started with Clerk Boudry. Clerk Boudry.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. Thank you for moderating this panel, and I just want to thank the Attorney General.
Closer to you.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Gotcha. So thank you, Mayor. Thank you for moderating for us today. And I want to thank the Attorney General's office for reaching out to the City of Ann Arbor to host this important conversation. For those of you who don't know, so I'm the city clerk. In Michigan, elections are run at the local level, so I am the chief election official for all the election operations within the City of Ann Arbor. So we have local, county, as well as state. But the election pieces that you see the most, poll workers, opening up polling places, our operations on the University of Michigan campus, those are all run through the City of Ann Arbor. So we're here today specifically to talk about the integrity of the election and about what we're doing to keep the elections and the vote safe. So I do just want to acknowledge that you're sitting in a brand new city-owned facility, and that is part of what we're doing to make sure that Ann Arbor elections are safe and secure and that you can feel comfortable about the accuracy of the vote counting. The room you're actually in is where we count all of our absentee ballots on election night. So this is a new building here in 2024. We also, in the back room, it's where all of our equipment is secured and where we do all of our testing ahead of Election Day. So there's a lot of conversation about security, and that includes physical spaces as well as the security of voters and our poll workers is all very important to us. Mayor Taylor touched on some of the new reforms that have helped not just secure elections, but access to elections. And one of the things that we take very seriously and promote the most in Ann Arbor is making sure that every voice is heard and that every voter has access to the ballot box. And that includes secure drop boxes that we've added more and more since 2020 that are around town. That includes access for first-time voters in a town like Ann Arbor. A lot of students have never voted before, and their first time voting is going to be on campus at the University of Michigan. We have 2 satellite offices, so we make that access to the ballot box easier for first-time voters. They can register, they can get an absentee ballot, they can return their ballot, or they can early vote, all on campus at the University of Michigan Art Museum, as well as later this fall, we'll be up on North Campus at Duderstadt Center. So we're very proud of those initiatives. We're very proud of the efforts that we have made here in Ann Arbor to ensure a free and fair election and to give our voters confidence in the work that we're doing. Before I turn it over to Clerk Kestenbaum, I do also want to acknowledge that new in 2024 is early voting. And we have a wonderful partnership with the Ann Arbor District Library. We had the most early votes when we kicked off early voting in February for the presidential primary. And I think that's largely due to, again, physical spaces. We weren't asking voters to find us or to come to us, we came to them. So we're available from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. at City Hall, and then we have early voting from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. So you have a long window of opportunity to early vote in the city. And I think that all of these options make voting accessible to voters, and it lends to the confidence of what we're doing here. So thank you for joining us. We're very, very excited about this turnout. And Mayor, I'll turn it over to Clerk Kestenbaum. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Larry Kestenbaum. I'm the County Clerk and Register of Deeds for Washtenaw County. I'm the county's chief election official, but that doesn't mean that I have authority over every step of the process. As Clerk Beaudry already mentioned, Michigan has, compared to other states, a very decentralized election system. The cities and townships have major roles in terms of setting up polling places, deciding where precincts are, hiring and paying the election workers, handling the absentee ballots, whereas counties, the county clerk has a role with filings, candidate filings, campaign finance reporting, training most of the poll workers, and reimbursements for election expenses, collecting and dispersing those, and finally, organizing the tabulation and certification of the election. Most people and the media are obviously focused on the outcome of an election. We in the election world, election administration world, we need to manage the entire process from start to finish, to be thorough, attention to detail, and make sure that every vote is properly and fairly counted. And that goes on long after everybody's gone away because they know the outcome and they're no longer interested. But in Michigan, we ask a lot of our voters. If you live in the city of Ann Arbor, you get to vote on 97 different officials, each voter. If you count it all the way from president and vice president and U.S. senator and House and so forth, and the governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, attorney general, you have the county offices, you have the State Board of Education, the MSU Board of Trustees, the Wayne State Board of Governors, et cetera. It goes on. And plus, the Community College Board, the Library Board, the School Board, all those kinds of things. And it's a practical necessity to count all those votes for all of those different positions and all of those different candidates to use an automated system. I mean, the notion of hand counting all the ballots, which some people have put forward, it would take weeks to get the results. Now, here in Washtenaw County, one of the things that we have every 2 years is a struggle to fit everything in a general election ballot on 2 sides of one piece of 8.5 by 20-inch paper. Okay, all the proposals, all the candidates, and we did manage to do it this time. We don't have any two-page ballots. We could do a two-page ballot, but it would be, it would really, complicate the administration of it and multiply possibilities of errors. Oftentimes people who are critical of our election system point to other countries like, Ireland or Japan or other places where elections seem very simple. And, they might hand count it or they get a quick result and so forth. But what you don't see is that in those countries, they're typically voting on one thing. You have a ballot and it's a vote for the such and such party and it's easy to count. There's not, you don't have state senator and community college board on their ballot. So so those things are really not at all comparable. We have in this state, and I'm very happy to say, and I give credit to former Secretary of State Terry Lynn Land who made the decision, we have an optical scan paper ballot for all elections. And this is it's both low tech and it's the ultimate in high security. Basically, it means you can have recounts. The candidates can demand a recount if they think that there's a mistake in the result. And the recount is done by hand and with a whole lot of scrutiny. There are random precinct audits to verify the accuracy of the tabulated counts. And then the ballots themselves, after every federal election, are kept by law for 22 months. And those are available if somebody wanted to go and do their own recount. They could go look at the ballots and do it. And we don't see that very often. Michigan election law assumes there's no such thing as a truly nonpartisan actor. Every sensitive task in elections, from polling place to the absentee counting board to the certification and canvass process, there's always two people working together with different partisanships. Every sensitive task. And the Board of Canvassers, which certifies the election, which examines every detail, is made up of 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans. And and those people, they're very dedicated, very detail-oriented, and I'm very grateful for the work that they do. There are big changes, I think that's been already mentioned, big changes that have expanded the opportunities for voters. No reason absentee, postage paid on absentee ballots, early vote, 9 days of early voting, and election day registration, and you now have what you didn't have before. If you have an absentee ballot, and you can mail it in, or you could take it to a drop box, or you could go to an early voting site, or you could go to the polls on election day and put your own ballot into the tabulator. You didn't used to be able to do that. So you can see that it was counted, the flag comes up on the tabulator. To do all this, to accomplish all this, we have 27 city and township clerks in this county, and we had in the last general election 1,700 poll workers in all the jurisdictions of the county. This year, we're going to have even more. And the poll workers, contrary to what people sometimes think, they're not volunteers. They're paid by the hour for the training that they receive and for the time they spend on election day. And 16 and 17-year-olds are eligible to be poll workers as well. And so there's outreach to high schools for people who are interested in doing this. It's very educational. If anyone here in the audience or your family, your friends, are interested in looking into this, you can go to washtenaw.org/pollworker. And there's information there that you can follow up if you'd like. In addition to all that, with the various, there's a lot of anxiety about how these elections are going to work in the recent past. The county officials, the county and local election officials, have been working with state and federal agencies to do preparedness and security training. And I should say, election interference, election intimidation is illegal. Precinct chairs of each polling place, local clerks, and law enforcement are alert to intervene when necessary. And the Ann Arbor Police Department and the sheriff deputies have a pocket guide to election law that they carry with them. So we've printed out over 300,000 ballots, printed and delivered by the deadline, which was September 21st. And so tens of thousands have already been sent to absentee voters. So I'm very proud of the process that we have in this county and how smoothly we have all managed to work together in creating our elections and making them work. And I look forward to any questions you might have. And if after this forum, if you have a question for me, my email is very simple, kestenbaum@gmail.com. And so drop me a line and I can see if I can answer your question.
Attorney General.
And for us to continue discussing your right to vote and how to participate, our new voting rights laws, and some of the new policies that go into place, and also what we can do and what we are doing to best protect the safety, security, and accuracy of your vote. Go. Do you have anything to say?
Well, this is our fifth town hall together. Certainly the most lively. And
At least this time we got students to participate.
exactly. Our last one was a little less attended, but
Microphone didn't work over here. I was going to try.
it strikes me that this is my 8th election where in some capacity I've worked to protect voters. And I am excited for the next 40 days because we have a lot to do to ensure that this election remains free and secure and fair. I will say, every single time we've done this, there's been a question on non-citizens voting. I brought a visual aid today from our branch offices, which shows how people get a driver's license, which ensures that people who are non-citizens don't get on our voting rolls. But I really leave it up to everyone here to ask us questions, and we'll just go from there.
Yeah, if I can finish off some of the remarks that I was making, and then we'll get to questions real quickly. I just want to talk about, when you talk about the safety and the security of Michigan elections, first of all, I think everybody knows that we use paper ballots, which is an incredibly important thing when you talk about being able to contest an election in the event that you are concerned about the results. Those paper ballots remain and can be recounted, and we do have a system, of course, for recounts. In addition to that, of course, we have audits that are performed by the Department of State. 250 from the 2020 election and 200 from the 2022 election,
Exactly.
correct? And in addition to that, of course, we have lawsuits, lots and lots and lots of lawsuits, where if people feel as though for any reason that the elections were not conducted with accordance to the law, then they have the ability to challenge that in court, and they do challenge that in court. And it is my job to defend the Department of State and the state of Michigan and the will of the voters, whatever that might be. And we do that regularly. With that, just a few things I did want to talk about, and that is the fact that, from time to time we do have cases that involve some sort of allegation of impropriety. And when that occurs, then the Michigan Department of State and the Bureau of Elections performs an investigation. And if they find that they believe there may be evidence of a crime, that gets referred to the Department of Attorney General, where I have a staff of investigators and career prosecutors who review the evidence. It is very, very infrequently that we see election laws broken. But when they are, we hold people accountable. And we do have a handful of cases that I've prosecuted over the course of my time in office. I will say, because I know there's the topic of non-citizens voting comes up a lot. So the cases came to me after the 2018 election, the 2020 election, and the 2022 election. We had one case of an individual who was not a citizen of the United States who tried to vote. She was a Canadian woman, and we prosecuted her. So that is the total number of cases that I've seen. I know that there's a lot about that, and I know others might want to address it. We have a handful of other types of cases, people who tried to vote twice, a handful of people, all of them parents of children of voting age that filled out an application for their child to have an absentee ballot. That's illegal. That's illegal. You can't do that. You can't fill that out with the hopes that maybe your child will be home at a certain time. Only they can do that for themselves. So we do pursue those cases, and those folks get charged and they go before a court of law because of election law violations. On rare occasions, we have, about 1,600 clerks in the state of Michigan?
Overall.
The vast majority of them, like your clerks up here today, work so hard to cross all their T's, dot all their I's, do everything that they need to do to make sure that your vote is accurately represented. But every rare once in a while, we have an issue with a clerk. And when that happens, we hold them accountable too. And I'm not happy to say it, but I have prosecuted 3 clerks now since I've been in office. The first was the Southfield City Clerk, the second was the Flint Township Clerk, and the third is the Hillsdale Township Clerk. Not Allen Township? Hillsdale County, Allentown. No, it wasn't Allen Township. I think you're thinking of something else. Not the Hillsdale County Clerk, I'm sorry. The Adams Township Clerk in Hillsdale County. Thank you, though, Lawrence, because I got that one wrong. But with that, so that does happen on occasion. Just like, again, we have other individuals who sometimes are in elected offices and violate the law, and if so, then they're held accountable. But the thing is, the reason why we're easily able to do that is because of these multiple levels of review that you've heard about, from the local level to the county level to the state level. And, I will say, it's not that there are never errors, and I would love to hear more about this from you guys, but when there are, it is so easy to catch them because there are so many different layers of review. So if there's an error at the local level, it'll be caught at the county. If there's an error at the county, it gets caught by the state. And as a result, we have the safest and most secure system you can imagine. And I would say this to anybody who has concerns, to anybody who has doubts, I really, really recommend that you get trained as a poll worker. And what I find is even the people who have received the most misinformation and aren't sure that our elections are safe and secure and accurate, once they receive that poll testing, the poll worker training, they become very certain that this is a great system and that truly it works. So with that, I don't know if you had more to say, Go-Go, or if anybody else wanted to before we started taking questions.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
I think everybody's microphone should be back, but we should test it because they were in and out due to some disruptions earlier. Oh, yours is not on?
Do you want to use mine?
It's not coming on, so we'll figure it out. I'm reminded about my start in working on election protection. Not too far from here, actually. I was a poll worker back in 2010, or a poll challenger back in 2010 at Community High School in Ann Arbor, making sure that polling locations were open on time and that folks knew where to go and vote. And that was all we had to do previously to ensure that folks could have their rights respected. But of course, the controversies of the last couple of election cycles have changed the very nature of election administration. And it reminds me a lot of a story that my mom told me when I was growing up. As you might have guessed, Agogo is not a traditional American name. My parents are Nigerian immigrants. Well, it is. I do like to say that. I think Agogo and all the different types of names that we have in this country are as American of American pie because ultimately we're a melting pot. We bring the best of the whole entire world here, and that's what motivated my parents to come to this country. And when my mom was growing up in Nigeria, she had the first presidential election in their history at the age of 19. And as she tells the story, the amount of time that she was in line always grows. It was 2 hours, now it's 4, it's 6, it expands. But she was in that line, and eventually she got frustrated, and she wanted to leave. And her father said, no, we've got to stay in line and cast our ballot because it's our civic duty. It's a part of our democracy. And democracy is a team sport. And so when 2020 approached, I had that mindset that my mom had raised me with, and I decided to become Michigan State Director of All Voting is Local. And that year during a pandemic, we led the way in installing 466 drop boxes across the state of Michigan. We made sure that we had MichiganDropbox.com so that people could find their drop boxes. But the controversies of that year and January 6th made it plain to us, especially all of us in this room, and especially all of us in Michigan, who love our Constitution, love our democracy, and love our right to vote, that more needed to be done. And so what did we do? We got together with a group of voters, of people who believed in elections, administrators, and we drafted Proposal 2 to ensure that folks had access to early voting, that they had access to absentee ballots that automatically get sent to you if you get on an absentee ballot list, that you have a drop box in every single community in the state, that we have a ballot tracking system that allows you to know where your ballot is at all times. And so we made that push. And in reward, the Secretary of State decided to make me Deputy Secretary of State and give me all the hard work of implementing this very hard proposal that really Jackie and her whole entire team have done such a wonderful job. I know that we have done, and to the Ann Arbor Township Clerk as well, we want to be inclusive. I know that we ask a lot of our clerks. I know we do. And I know that the proposal that I helped put on the ballot also put a lot on your plates, and I'm deeply grateful for all that we've done together. But there's still more to do, because this election is especially critical to set the direction. Every single election is a chance for us to come together as a country, as a community, and decide what we want to do next. And a lot of people are concerned about whether non-citizens are on our rolls. But we have a unique experience in Michigan because we have Motor Voter. Motor Voter was put in place by Richard Austin in the 1970s, our former Secretary of State, and eventually it became nationwide. But because we started it here in Michigan, 80% of voter transactions, voter registration tax transactions, take place through our department. And so what that means is that when you get your first driver's license, one of our employees will take a sheet like this, and they will go through a number of steps. First, they're going to see that you have a Social Security number. Second, they're going to do a proof of legal presence, and you have to have some documentation that shows that you have a right to be here legally. If you are here as a U.S. citizen, you can be placed on the voting rolls. If not, then you're not placed on the voting rolls. And then you have to have proof of identity and proof of Michigan residency. So that takes care of 80% of the people who are registered to vote in this state. If for whatever reason you are filling out a paper application and you don't supply your driver's license or your Social Security number, you have to supply proof of residency and proof of identity to show that you are actually eligible to vote. And so it really keeps our system secure. And ultimately, like I said before, this is a team sport with Larry, Jackie, and Dana and us all working together. But you can join us too, and by being a poll worker. So go to michigan.gov/democracymvp and sign up to be a poll worker. Sign up to participate in this democracy and learn about the system that we all live under. At the end of the day, I'm supremely confident and really proud of where we're going to go in this November, because I think we're going to have a great election, and hopefully everyone will accept the election results. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Deputy Secretary, and thank you, Attorney General and Clerk, for your words and observations about what we're doing here to make sure that elections here are free and fair. There are a couple of questions that I hope we can have some time to run through. The first relates, and this is, I throw it up to the whole. We've talked a fair bit about mail-in ballots, but we haven't talked about the Postal Service itself. And so we have had experience with Postal Service delay and holding of ballots. What sort of engagement has occurred with the Postal Service, and how can we, what can we learn from that experience?
If I could just say this, in 2020, I sued the U.S. Postal Service and Postmaster Louis DeJoy because it was very clear that there were efforts that were made, significant efforts, to slow down the mail, specifically to make it harder to vote absentee. As you all know, your vote has to be in by 8 p.m. on Election Day. And so it seemed to be a significant effort to make sure they were, stripping out components of distribution, of some of the distribution centers, and really trying to limit the hours of their workers, and a number of other things. That the timing of it was such that it seemed very, very clear that it had a specific purpose. And of course, this was at the height of COVID. And so people didn't want to vote in person for reasons everyone can understand. And so we sued the Postmaster General. We were successful. The day before the election, I actually had a court order, and I went into the distribution centers in both Detroit and Pontiac, because our order was that for any absentee ballots that remained at the distribution center, that it had to be delivered to whatever clerk it was on its way to by 8 p.m. that night. And so they had to send out trucks all over the state. And I remember seeing ballots that were in, again, Detroit and Pontiac that were destined for Traverse City or destined for Grand Rapids. And they had to get over there and drive them so that they could be delivered. Sadly, there were ballots that were not delivered in time because these were ballots that people had ordered, and they were still on their way to the voter, and they had been stuck there in some instances for 3 or 4 weeks. So to some extent, there were people, I think, that were denied their right to vote as a result. But with that being said, I know that's why there are some very specific recommendations being made by MDOS in terms of when you should have your ballot in the mail if you're going to vote that way. And I don't know if that's something that our clerks or Agogo, if you want to talk about what your recommendations are. And of course, the ability to drop that in a Dropbox as well. But we recognize those issues. I've actually been involved in litigation over those issues.
So I would just say, if you're going to return your absentee ballot via the U.S. Postal Service, put it in the mail no later than 14 days before the election to ensure there's enough time for it to get there. Otherwise, put it in the Dropbox. I would even put it in the Dropbox even if you're outside of that 14-day window. It's just the most direct way to get your absentee ballot back. And of course, you can just always go into the clerk's office and hand it to a member of the staff too.
Mayor, I'll just comment locally. Ballots went out today, so if you're one of Ann Arbor's permanent ballot voters, you should see that ballot in a couple of days. And just from my perspective, working with the postmaster in Ann Arbor, we do see that the local ballots stay in town. They don't go to a distribution center. So we see those ballots in voters' hands usually in 3 to 5 days at the absolute latest. So we put those in the mail today, and in past elections, I've seen voters have them by Saturday or Monday. So if you're one of our permanent ballot voters, expect that ballot in the mail. And so I will just say we do have a higher level of confidence here in Ann Arbor in our local post office than the experience that others have had. Also, as others have said, we do have secure drop boxes around town, and so we certainly encourage the ballots are postage paid, or you can use any of those secure drop boxes. They are checked daily, and then on election day, you have until 8 p.m. to use the boxes, and they're checked 3 and 4 times on that final day.
There's been a little bit of conversation about drop boxes, and so if we can just perhaps touch upon the drop boxes themselves. describe them physically, how and if are they themselves secured, and then what is done to check the ballots that are in the boxes as it might be to ensure their accuracy and security.
Do you want to take that?
Do you want me to take that?
Yeah.
So the Ann Arbor drop boxes have a city seal on them. They're very large. They're white with green lettering, very recognizable. We have 8 of them around town. Plus, we have boxes inside City Hall as well as at UMA and Duderstadt Center when those facilities are open. The Ann Arbor box that we've had since 2020 is a very high quality, thick steel gauge. All of the components that put the box together are on the inside of the box. So there's literally no bolts or anything that anybody could tamper with that box. Our understanding is it is stronger and thicker than even a postal mail box. So we like to say here in Ann Arbor that we have the Cadillac of drop boxes. And
They're pretty nice.
they're very nice. And they are all under video surveillance. I knew there was something else from a security standpoint. So I mentioned they're checked daily and they are under video surveillance.
And that is, I mean, going forward, that is going to be the law too, right?
Yes.
I mean, you guys are doing that now voluntarily, but moving forward, the law has changed to require surveillance of drop boxes, correct?
Yeah. So all drop boxes installed after October 1st, 2020 have to be under video surveillance. Anything installed prior to October 1st, 2020 will have to be under video surveillance after this election cycle.
Excellent. Talk a little bit about day of election and the security of election inspectors, folks and poll workers, folks who are at the ballot box, at the polling stations, working to ensure the elections are properly administered at the precinct on day of.
If I could just weigh in on this.
Please.
So firstly, while we don't have police at inside the precinct, and we do that for good reason. I mean, while some people find the police to be a comforting presence, others feel intimidated by it. So as a result, they're not inside your precinct. However, they are on alert, and we've worked tirelessly with, whether it's the Michigan State Police, the county sheriffs, the, local municipal police departments. And what we've been doing is we've been basically, tabletop exercises and training for, months and months and months to anticipate any set of circumstances. But, the law has changed in order to escalate penalties for people who threaten election workers. We are very, very determined. I have in my department, we created in 2019 a hate crimes and domestic terrorism division, where if somebody threatens election officials, if somebody threatens a clerk, we charge those cases and we pursue them aggressively. But we train together to anticipate any set of circumstances to make sure that everyone has the ability to vote and to vote safely and to protect those who are at the heart of the arsenal of democracy, our election workers. So we work very hard on that. I don't think you guys can talk more at the local and the county level about what you guys do for safety and security. But, from a law enforcement perspective, that is something we work very hard on.
Mayor, if I may?
Please.
Here in Ann Arbor, the city charter dictates who the election commission is. So I mentioned that I'm the chief election official for the city, but the other 2 members of the city election commission are the chief of police and the city attorney. And similar to what Attorney General Nessel said, we don't want a uniform presence in the polls because that can it'd be intimidating to some voters. However, we do have a whole team on our city attorney staff who do visit our polling places that we expect to have more activity, such as the art museum. And so we already in anticipation of activity, whether that's challengers, aggressive campaigning, any number of things, we have those attorneys ready who are a really big asset to us in making sure that both sides of any issue understand what the law is and what each person's rights are. So I am very thankful to have both the police and the city attorney as a partner here locally.
So a question with respect to the ballot itself, the actual physical ballot itself when it comes in, what steps are taken to ensure the privacy of that physical ballot.
Yeah. So one thing that we should talk about is just the process of bringing in an absentee ballot. And then we can also talk about an election day ballot. Maybe, Jackie, you can talk about the election day ballots, and I'll cover the absentee. So when you get an absentee ballot in the mail, it comes in 2 envelopes, essentially. An outer envelope where you have to eventually sign when you're returning it, and then an inner envelope which actually protects the security of your ballot. And so when it's sent back to the clerk first checks the signature on the outside of that envelope. And that signature is something that is really tied to your driver's license. So when you go into one of our branches and get a driver's license, you sign something, and that signature is kept on file and it's put into what we call the qualified voter file, the QVF. And your clerk brings up that, or someone on her staff, brings up that signature and compares that signature on file to the signature on your absentee ballot envelope to ensure it matches. And there are standards that govern that review process. If there's an issue, your clerk contacts you to let you know that there's an issue and you can rectify it. So once that happens and it's all processed, then there are a number of different procedures where separate people, numerous people, open it, take out that envelope. Then another person takes out the actual ballot and puts it in a pile, and then they take off the ballot stub, and then it finally goes into the tabulator. So it really ensures, one, that ballots are only coming from eligible voters and the people who actually requested them, and that when they're counted, they're not matched with your actual name so that we protect the secret ballot.
And then on election day, the voter has, their ballot comes, it'll be flat, not folded like the absentees, and it comes inside of a sleeve or a folder. The poll worker only sees that same stub that Agogo was talking about, same as the absentee. They don't see the voted ballot within the folder. They match the stub to confirm it's exactly the ballot that they issued them a few minutes prior, and they tear that stub off, and then the voter is given a 10-foot privacy area to insert the ballot from the sleeve into the tabulator. So we respect that privacy, whether it's by absentee ballot, the same process early, or election day voting in person.
But it is legal now to take a selfie with your own ballot as long as you don't capture anybody else's ballot, right? And does anybody want to talk about the amazing new iVoting stickers that are now available?
They're pretty awesome. It's now one of the things that I'm in charge of getting T-shirts to people who really want them. They find my number and then they call and say, "Please, can I have a T-shirt?" And we give them out. So they're pretty great.
The deputy does all the good stuff.
All the stuff. There's
Secret-
nothing off limits in the
That's
department.
right. And it was a secret ballot, but I voted for the cat I voted sticker, so I was glad to see that made one of the finalists there. Yeah.
The 2018 constitutional amendments guaranteed for the first time in the Constitution the right to a secret ballot in Michigan, which is a surprisingly new concept. I mean, it was not the early days of, right up through the 19th century, ballots were not secret. So, but we now have that established in the Constitution.
We just have a couple more questions. So we've talked a little bit about the folks who are going to be helping us on the day of voter people, poll workers and the like. What are the qualifications or skills that are necessary to be one of these temporary workers helping folks at the precincts?
I can take that. So we hire a whole host of people in Ann Arbor, and I was actually just talking about this today. Some of them, I've been city clerk for 20 years, and a lot of our poll workers have been poll workers for longer than that. We have some 30 and 40-year, very experienced workers. But we also recruit from the Ann Arbor Public Schools. We do allow 16 and 17-year-olds to be poll workers, and we find that a mix of experience levels and some of our newer, younger students are actually very excited and eager to learn the new technology that, whether that's the electronic poll book or working with the tabulator. Here in Ann Arbor, we're also fortunate with our university partners. We have a relationship with Michigan Law, and so the law students make great poll workers for us as well, similar to our city attorneys in the polling places. And then, of course, the basic requirement is that you're a registered voter, other than the young people, and that you're 18 and a registered voter within the state of Michigan. So, and then you have to be willing to declare a political party, and that can be a minor party. So some people come from outside the city. If we're recruiting, we tend to need more Republican workers, and so sometimes we'll recruit from out county, and then they'll come into the city to work. So we do have to have that party balance at every precinct, as well as at the absent voter counting board and our early vote sites. But basically, if you're a registered voter, we would welcome you. And everybody's put in a plug for their poll worker recruitment. So I will just say that if you actually live in the city, Rachel has forms, or not in the city, forms up at the front counter. So feel free to just apply right directly to us, and we'll get you hired here in Ann Arbor.
I was at Huron High School, and I recruited a bunch of 16-year-olds to be your poll workers. So
All right, wow.
Fantastic.
hopefully they come your way.
Excellent. So what's being done at the local level to reach out to folks who are perhaps less election aware regarding voting processes?
Mayor, I think somebody mentioned this earlier, but when you talk about people with, I guess, some of the national attention since 2020, if you want to say election denying, or even just people with questions, we have found over the years when people reach out and say, I don't trust this, I'm not sure about the process, what are you doing with the absentee ballots? And we say, why don't you come join us? Why don't you just see what it's like to be a poll worker? If you don't want to commit to all day, we have the check-in of results at the end of the night. Those are also bipartisan teams, Republican and Democratic. I did mention minor parties can work. Some of the particulars, like sealing up the ballot box, is Republican and Democrat, but we do have jobs for people that choose to be a minor party. So often, people with questions, when they come actually see the process and participate in it, we get the feedback, wow, you guys know what you're doing. I'm glad I got to be a part of it, and I now have a level of confidence and understanding that I didn't previously have.
So I'll also say from the Secretary of State side, we have developed a social media campaign, which launched actually today formally. It's called It's So Simple. And basically there's ads running, and you can click on it, and it will show you the 3 different options that you have to vote on election day, absentee, and early voting, and give you more information about how you can cast your ballot. Of course, in terms of just dispelling the disinformation side of things, we have a website, michigan.gov/SOS fact check, where you can go and learn those facts. And of course, talk to your neighbors. I mean, that's really what we need to ultimately do to get over this sickness, really, that we have in this country, is that we all need to be armed with facts and be willing to talk to our neighbors about them, because you are more likely to listen to your neighbor than you are to listen to me. Just quite frankly, because you know your neighbor, you trust your neighbor. There is a lack of trust in government officials, unfortunately. But we're working here by having forums like this to build that trust, because we know it's important.
Yeah, and we certainly very much appreciate what the state has done with the Michigan Voter Information Center, that a voter can go online and see all of the issues and candidates that are on their ballot, so that they might be better prepared, or if, for example, if they're voting absentee. But either way, I know that to some it's a bewildering experience to come and find the ballot is much longer than what you expected. But it's now possible to find all those things and know ahead of time, that you're voting for the community college board or whatever it is.
So,
Mayor, can I make
please.
one more? I see Catherine Carver is in the audience from UMich Votes. When we talk about voter education, if you haven't been to UMA and you have an opportunity to visit, it is amazing what, and this is not my work, this is the UMich Votes Coalition, and our partnership with Stamp School of Art and Design, the educational components that are on the walls. It's not just going there to register to vote. There's a gigantic ballot that explains what does it mean to straight party vote. Make sure you flip the ballot over. What are the proposals? What is a nonpartisan versus partisan section? So there's all these educational components of that exhibit that I really encourage people to, if you haven't been to UMA, it is really worth visiting. And we'll be up at Duderstadt here in a few weeks with more information. And it's my understanding that soon we'll have that large ballot at City Hall, because I did tell the stamps professors that it's not just 18-year-olds, we all need a refresher. So we hope to have that at City Hall as well. It's fantastic. And so I just wanted to call out and thank the UMich Votes partners for being here.
One quick one. If an early voter dies before the election, they've submitted their ballot and then they die, what happens to that ballot?
Well, if it's,
go ahead.
If it's an early voter, they've already voted, so that's, their vote counts. If it's an absentee voter, local clerks are supposed to keep track of obituaries of people who died right before the election and to pull out and not count absentee ballots from people who were deceased at the time of the election. But the process is that when you're early voting, your ballot is going right into the tabulator, and there's no way to take that back.
And I'll
Yeah.
just address the whole entire overall situation about dead people on the rolls. It's always this thing of, oh, dead people vote. That's just not true. As many, I won't make it. Every
Jimmy
year,
Carter's going to make it. He's told us. So
every year, 100,000 people who pass away are removed from the rolls. And we have records from the Social Security Administration, from the obituaries, from the county medical examiner, and we're constantly, every single day, the qualified voter file, the QVF, changes because people are passing away and we're taking them out, or they're moving and they're removing themselves from the rolls. We do a very good job in the state of Michigan, and we've actually had a federal judge say that we're one of the best states in the country to do it.
One question, two questions left, kind of looking to the future. Talk about the trend of mail-in voting and absentee voting and day of voting and early voting and so forth. To the extent we can, because these processes are still fairly new for our state, what do we think the trend is going forward with respect to the popularity and directionality of absentee voting, early voting, and day of voting?
Well, if I could speak to that a little, I've been watching. We've all been watching for years as the proportion of people who vote absentee has crept up from election to election for the last 20 years or more. And then we had in 2018 the ballot proposal which took away the requirement that you swear to a reason why you need to vote absentee, and just in time for COVID. And obviously with COVID, the proportion of people voting absentee went all the way to 75% in this county. And it's fallen since, but it's not anything like what it was before. I think that people appreciate the ability, to have in effect a take-home exam, and to be able to look things up, and you can see, because the totals are added up separately, you can see that people who vote absentee, there tend to be more considered votes. So especially in the absence of the kind of local news media that we used to have, giving people more opportunity to study their, who to vote for and look things up is a good thing. I think that in the long run, more states are going to follow what Oregon and Colorado and others have done in terms of making elections more mail-in. But I think that in Michigan, that's still a long way off.
Yeah, I think overall, I mean, the trends that we've seen from states that started early voting is that the first election, people are just becoming aware of it, and there's not as much usage, and then it jumps the second election, and then it tapers off from there. I think overall, we're hoping to get to a place where the vast majority of votes are cast early, either through absentee or through early vote. Hopefully 75%, that's my personal goal. And then we only have the remaining quarter that's for election day. And the reason that would be really great is that in combination with what we call pre-processing and early tabulation would allow us to count the vast majority of ballots and have them ready to be released by 8 p.m. on Election Day. I know there are some technology issues that some of us have discussed, and we're going to get there, but like it or not, one of the things that people do watch on election night and do judge how well we do our job is how fast those election results are getting out. And so we're trying to meet that expectation that the public has, and that's one of the reasons why we have innovated in our electoral system here in Michigan.
I'm sorry if you guys covered this, but I just want to make sure that you guys, if you could talk a little bit about, for people who are mailing their ballot in, or even who dropped it into a drop box, and who worry, did my clerk get it in time? Has my vote counted? Because now it's election day, and they are worried, like, did you actually receive the ballot? So could you talk a little bit about that process and what people can do so they make sure that their vote actually made it to the clerk's office and actually got fed into a tabulator somewhere, and they know that they actually voted?
So I can tell you that was part of Proposition 22.2, that there would be a statewide notification system of
It actually
ballot-
launched today.
Oh, okay, of ballot tracking. Locally, we've been doing that for a number of years. You actually get an email, so many of you may have gotten it today, saying your ballot is on the way, and that comes from the city clerk's office. And we also tell voters that not only that we received it, but that we checked the signature and it is here, secured, and ready for election day processing. So that gives voters a high level of confidence that not only that we have it in our possession, but it's all set and ready to be counted. So we've been doing that locally for a number of years. And I think that that is the one thing that we do that often people immediately reply and say, this is so great, thank you for letting me know that. And so that's been a very popular feature locally that we have done.
And I guess finally, for not perhaps the system we have today, but for the system we might have tomorrow, ranked choice voting. We had actually two questions looking to have the panel talk a little bit about ranked choice voting, what its prospects here perhaps are in the state of Michigan, and how it might affect the city of Ann Arbor.
I myself, I'm a skeptic of ranked choice voting. For a
What
number
is ranked choice voting anyway?
Ranked choice voting is where, let's say you decide, who's your first choice candidate, your second choice candidate, third choice candidate, and so forth. And the ranked choice voting is used in a number of different situations where it can be quite effective when people are looking at at one thing, like the winner of the Hugo Award for science fiction or things like that is done by ranked choice voting, and a number of other things. But what the trouble with it is that ranked choice doesn't scale. And when you have 97 different officials to vote on, it's really becoming, just incredibly intimidating for voters to have to rank every school board member, every candidate for the, Wayne State University Board of Governors and things like that. And so Ann Arbor had ranked choice voting in one election in the 70s for mayor, and it worked as it tended at that time. But it was still, it had to be done with paper ballots and so forth. The other aspect of it, I've mentioned how we struggle to fit the entire general election on two sides of one piece of paper, 8.5 by 20-inch piece of paper. If we had ranked choice voting, it would be a sheaf of papers, because I've never seen a ranked choice ballot that wasn't a lot larger than the. But some of the benefits of ranked choice voting in terms of perhaps having a more moderate outcome and so on could be achieved much more easily with approval voting, where voters can vote for all the candidates that they approve of. In other words, they might vote for a major party and a minor party candidate, that kind of thing. And the one getting the most votes is the winner. Almost every benefit for ranked choice voting could be done with approval voting without having to change our ballots.
What about a jungle primary like they have in California for, some of the races?
Well, that's another possibility.
Yeah, in Alaska, what they actually do is they have a jungle primary. They get it down to the top 4, and then they rank the top 4 in the general election. So that's another way that it could be done. But currently, I don't want to steal the Attorney General's thunder here, Michigan law would have to change to allow ranked choice voting.
So I'll just, from the local side, note that when Michigan law does allow it, it is in the city charter, so Ann Arbor voters have said, we're ready when it's allowed. So it is in our city charter.
That's right.
There are a couple of questions from the audience. How does the panel feel? Are we good to go? Do you have more time?
No, listen, obviously, we had some distractions here. I came here to answer questions, at least within my bailiwick, about the election and about what we're doing at the Department of Attorney General, and I'm going to stay as long as anyone likes.
Yeah.
Well, if I could say this, first of all, voter intimidation is a crime. And, you know, there are cases that we are prosecuting right now, and I would say the most notable case actually involves the robocallers from 2020, where you had some political operatives that sent out in the city of Detroit about 11,000 robocalls. They did this in multiple other states as well, providing, you know, misinformation and disinformation in an attempt to scare people away from voting absentee, saying things like if you have outstanding warrants, the police are going to come get you if you register to vote absentee, or debt collectors are going to get your information this way, and they're going to come after you, things like that. So we prosecuted them. We took that case all the way up to the Michigan Supreme Court, and now it's at the Court of Appeals on some, I would say we won, but there are some clarifications that need to be made at the Court of Appeals level, and then I expect it will come back down to circuit court so that these individuals can be tried. They've already been convicted in multiple other states. But that being the case, it is a crime to, if you intimidate a voter in a way that would deter them from voting, then that is absolutely a crime. Obviously, you're talking about malicious destruction of property, which is also a crime. And it's the kind of thing where I always, you know, encourage people to contact their local law enforcement, to contact their county law enforcement, and to let them know about that. But, you know, fortunately, I think, you know, obviously, it's not just that we have secret ballot voting, but it's that you have so many different ways and opportunities to vote. And while I maintain that it's absolutely safe to go and vote in person, whether that's early voting or on election day, you do have so many other opportunities now. And so anyone who, if you did have any concerns, and I don't think you should, but in case you do, again, you know, you can vote from the safety of your own home, or you can, you know, just take your ballot and at your convenience, drop it in the drop box. So there are so many ways that we can do that so that nobody ever has to, you know, be subject to fear or intimidation when it comes to casting their ballot and exercising their fundamental right to vote.
So my question is it legal to buy a vote? And in that regard, for example, Taylor Swift offering concert tickets and Harris offering to have somebody come in and have photographs taken. To me, that seems like you're buying votes.
Well, you're not saying who you want them to vote for, though. Like, what is illegal, absolutely illegal, is to say, vote for this candidate, and if so, you get a certain either sum of money or something that is, you know, has some sort of net worth to it, right? You know, whether you're getting goods or services or actual just cash, money. You can't say vote for this person. So that is what is illegal under the law.
Yeah, and there's a provision of the election law that if you're in a polling place and you vote your ballot and you show it to somebody else, then your ballot is void, because that's the way that they, in the old days, they used to say, you know, pay $5 for voting for their candidate for councilman or something like that. They didn't want to pay you the money if they couldn't be sure you had voted that way.
Fiscal discipline.
Yes, sir.
I have a dispute with our local election in that the building, it's a school building. And there's a law that you can't be within so many feet of the polling place. They're, as far as I'm concerned, they're skirting it because they're within 50 feet of the front door, but the polling place is in the back of the building. So they're 300
You mean while you're wearing either you're campaigning or you have election gear on? You mean that? That's what you mean. Not that you can't be within a certain distance, but that you can if you somehow are campaigning for somebody in some way, shape, or form, where it's evident that you are. Correct? Okay. Sorry, I just wanted clarification.
So they're within 50 feet of the front door, but the polling place is 300 feet beyond that because it's at the back of the school.
Just to be clear, the law is 100 feet from the entrance to the polling place, the building. So it doesn't matter where within the building, it's 100 feet buffer from the front door or any door that any voter is accessing. So if you're another 300 feet inside the building, it's still 100 feet from the exterior.
So if I complain, who's going to move them?
Well, I mean, it should be the local police. If you complain that somebody's engaged in electioneering, then it should be that you contact the clerk, and the clerk should contact the police if need be. I mean, first best practices are just the clerk goes in and says, or the election workers, right, to say you need to move back. I mean, you don't go right to the police, but if people won't comply.
Is this within the city of Ann Arbor?
No, this is in Whitmore Lane.
Okay, because we do have visible signs that say the 100 feet barrier, no campaigning beyond this point. But that's, each clerk does that delineation of the 100 feet differently in terms of whether you physically see something.
And the first line of reporting would be the precinct chair, the chair of the poll workers in that precinct, that was responsible for maintaining order in the precinct, backed up by the local clerk and law enforcement, et cetera.
Are there any other questions that folks have for the panel? Thank you very much. Yes, I would like to say thank you so much. Deputy Secretary, Attorney General, thank you. Clerk, thank you.
If I can just make this one last statement just on behalf of myself. Your vote is your voice, and you can scream and yell, you can bang on drums, but at the end of the day, you have to vote. You have to vote. That's how you make significant changes in our society. And something that I know that I've tried to do, that many others have tried to do, is when we don't like our elected officials, we go out, we recruit people who we think are better than them. And then we, engage in a vigorous effort to campaign for them and to get other people to vote for them as well. And I think we've made a lot of changes in our country as a result of people who just were very, very active in ensuring that we had as many people turn out to vote as possible, and to engage in, meaningful discussions about our differences of opinion, and then you vote for the person who best represents your values. And unless or until we do that, then we don't have the type of representation that we really need. But I hope for the students or other folks who are here today, of the many hopes that I have for them, and frankly for the entirety of that generation, of which I have a couple of kids myself who are in college, I hope that they're all registered to vote. And I hope they all show up at the polls, and I hope they make their voices heard that way.
Absolutely.
And if I could add, I said this before, but my email is kestenbaum, my last name @gmail.com, and I'm if you have questions or you think of questions, particularly about elections or things in general, feel free to let me know and drop me a line. I admit that you ask me a question and I am very likely to go into how the origin of how things got to be that way. I know that's a kind of an annoying habit of mine, but but if you want to know, like I wrote a thing recently that was posted on Reddit about how it is that we decide the order of candidates on the ballot and how that has changed over the years. So just as an example.
I'm gonna have to find that. I'm really grateful that we all got this chance to talk and answer some questions about our election processes and how we move forward. I'm looking forward to doing more of these with you, Attorney General, and going across the state, because ultimately it's really our job as election officials to communicate with you and let you know what's happening with your government. Because it's ultimately you guys are in charge. You're all of our collective bosses, and we're proud to serve. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.